When we first drove the Citroen C5 Aircross, we absolutely loved it for a lot of reasons. But there were a few niggling issues with the car, which this facelifted version seems to have ironed out. But is it now a complete all-rounder in the truest sense of the word? That's what we are trying to find out in this drive. India hasn't been the fairy tale story that Citroen hoped it would be, and that whole top-down approach has not really worked in the most effective way. Sometimes things do go wrong because when you launch a product at a very high price point and then expect people to start thinking very great things about the brand, it sometimes just backfires, because what you need in these times is something that appeals to the masses and is kitted out to the T. What people want is great value at a very, very good price point as well. So it's a whole combination of what works for the people and where are you pricing your product to be. So in that sense, it has been a compromise that Citroen made with the C5 Aircross, and that probably has not worked. Of course, the other point is that the network is not all that great, so the visibility of the brand is also very limited. But now with the introduction of the C3, which is a compact car that they've launched in the market at a very affordable price point, things will start to change. But with the C5 specifically, things have changed to a very slight degree, as they often do with the facelifted models. And over here on the outside, you will see a very nice and sleek treatment to the headlamps. You have a couple of LED DRLs running, which look very, very nice, especially when you look at this car in the night. It is going to be a very distinct sort of an affair. But the whole chirpy personality of the front end continues with the facelifted version as well. And if you notice, there is a slight or a very narrow sort of an opening, which is essentially a grille section to feed air into the engine between the bonnet and the lower part of the bumper as well. And that kind of breaks the monotony and takes away from the bulk of the front end. But more importantly, at least in my book, what the facelifted version of the C5 Aircross has managed to do is make itself a bit more appealing to the Indian buyer. Now, if you remember, and you can cross-reference this with our original C5 review, the whole treatment on the inside is aimed at this being a proper right-hand drive car. Earlier, the gear stick used to be on the far end of the whole tunnel that runs in the middle, and it was quite a stretch and a pain to kind of work as well. That has been done away with, and now you get a toggle over here towards the driver, and that is a welcome change, a welcome modification, because that frees up a lot of space in the center console and you get a massive storage compartment. And what Citroen has done very smartly is integrate all the traction modes, all the drive modes in this single switch over here. But the big party piece, of course, is this floating screen. And again, if you remember, the screen in the last one was integrated into the dashboard. This one stands out, and the quality of the screen is absolutely fantastic, and it's very sharp, very slick, a little laggy, but then you get around it and you start to kind of appreciate what Citroen has offered with this one. But yeah, I think this floating element again has kind of robbed the personality of the cabin. Now again, if you compare it with a pre-facelift model, you will find that the seats don't look the same. The upholstery has changed. Again, I think the sense of eccentricity is lost over here. The previous one, they were very nice, you know, they had almost like slab-like contours, but they were very, very comfortable. In this, the design or the upholstery design has changed, but the comfort remains exactly the same. And the seats hold you well in place. Yes, I have said in the past that it would have been absolutely amazing to have a little bit of a slider to get under your knees. But then that's just way too much of a dream, and we just can't stop wanting more. But just as they are, the seats are fantastic, and the general sense of comfort is very, very good. Now the C5 Aircross has never been a driver's car. It's not disappointing, but it's not something that is going to be an engaging drive experience. And when we're talking about dynamics, steering plays a very big part, and I've always been a fan of this steering wheel itself. Nice design, flat top and bottom. It has a good response, but it doesn't feel all that wholesome. Definitely does not have the sense of connectedness, and that kind of dulls down the drive experience. But this car is very comfort minded, and that is shoutingly evident by the suspension quality. And we have said this before as well, and there has been no change in the suspension. Instead of the bump stops, what Citroen has done is given the suspension setup a couple of cushions, and these hydraulic cushions, they act in such a way that the compression and rebound are very nicely controlled. There is no abruptness to the way the suspension works and the way the bumps are absorbed. It's all very progressive, and even when you're going with a little bit of a speed around some corners, it definitely tips over, but then it settles down into a constant compression mode and then just takes that compression along. So you can have a confident line going around any bend that you encounter, but it is not playful in any way at all. The highlight, however, is the ride quality. Because of that, the hydraulic cushions that you get, they make a world of difference, and this is evident specifically when you drive over some very scratchy surfaces or some very unusual potholes and bumps or irregularities in the road. It just drives over any kind of an obstruction as if it did not exist. It does make a little bit of a noise when going over some very sharp edges, but generally the whole experience of the suspension working to give you that brilliant ride quality is absolutely phenomenal. The C5 continues with a 2-liter diesel, very nice and smooth in terms of its power delivery. It does make a bit of a noise, and you can also hear it inside the cabin despite of all the acoustic insulation that Citroen has done in the C5. But the way this thing pulls, and especially through this gearbox, the 8-speed torque converter, is extremely nice, and you will not really feel wanting for more power, especially because this car is not made for spirited driving. In terms of cruising, this is absolutely bang on, and it goes through the gears in a very nice way. So much as even get on the throttle with a little bit of a suggestion, and this thing moves, and that is a great quality to have, because this engine has a fantastic mid-range, and it also is very flexible lower down the revs. I was impressed by it when we first drove it, and I continue to be impressed because there has been no change, and that's a very good thing. Now we of course have to consider the competition, and this thing largely competes against the Volkswagen Tiguan, the Jeep Compass largely competing in the same space, and also the Hyundai Tucson, and the new one has just been launched. So the competition is fierce, and that's exactly why Citroen needs to have a sense of USP, something that really differentiates it from the rest of the products. It does so with the suspension. But till how long can you have a battle just on one aspect alone? Now you have to have a car that gives you all the features and more, and that's where the Citroen C5 Aircross kind of lacks, because there still are some crucial features which have not been included in this facelift version. Seat ventilation, for example, a big miss in my book. And you don't even have wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So things which definitely should have been included as default in a car that costs about 40 lakh rupees, they're not here. So to round things up, what Citroen has done with the C5 Aircross facelift is deliver a smart package overall with all the updates that a facelift deserves. The front end has a nice eccentric design going on, and the rear is also very smart and sharp now. But what this car purely is all about is comfort, and that it delivers in spades with the suspension, the seats being absolutely fantastic, and just the overall sense of driving something which is individualistic and not very common on the road is very different, and that's what is going to appeal to a lot of people who are looking at something different in this category at this price point. And if you're okay to live with a little bit of a compromise, less features here and there, this thing can be a decent partner to you.